I want you to get together.
Hello everyone. This episode of the Nephilim Looked Like Clowns will be a reading of chapter 18 of my upcoming book of the same title. This chapter is called Sacred Clowning. This chapter summarises a specific type of ritual practice called the Sacred Clown. Volume 2 of this book series will be an in-depth exploration of each specific culture involved in these rituals found all over the world. But a foundational description should still be given to summarise these fascinating groups. Due to their similarities in dress and practices, they must be compared side by side to show that these separate tribes did indeed have interactions with entities that have very similar physical properties. Black and white patterned skin, horned antennae, large red mouths, and an attitude of utter irreverence for anything sacred or good. For the sake of this introductory chapter, and to lay the groundwork for later chapters, we will discuss the American natives and their sacred clowns specifically. Sacred clowns and their rituals exist in various ancient cultures worldwide and represent a reversal of societal norms and an embodiment of pre-creation chaos. An anthropological survey conducted in 1945 showed that out of 136 countries studied, 40 had ritual clowns. In certain traditions, clowning is an apotropaic, averting evil, ritual, a way of deflecting demonic attention from various religious activities. In other contexts, it serves as an initiatory ordeal in which the target must persevere through jests and insults hurled at him, as a lesson in the value of adversity and chaos, as tools for personal and societal growth. If this isn't the case, then the sacred clown may be a healer, exorcist, or protector of the tribe from spiritual and physical harm by being a direct channel to the spirits. On the healing nature of the comic shaman, Towson, author of Clowns, A Panoramic History of Fools and Jesters, had this to say, quote, "Much of the humour of the ceremonial clowns tends to be therapeutic, and may even include curing functions, the comic exorcism of the demons believed to be the causes of disease. This varies from culture to culture. Hopi clowns do not cure, but the Nwekwe clowns of the neighbouring Zuni Indians are a medicine society, and are also said to possess the power of black magic. Any illness diagnosed as spirit intrusion is treated by the clowns of the plains of the Ojibwa by dancing, singing, and whistling, and the shaking of rattles. Members of the Iroquois False Face Society wear basswood masks and perform violent theatrics to exorcise the demons of the disease. The Canadian Dakotas believe the clown to be the most powerful of shamans, for he is said to derive his curing ability from the guardian spirit, clown." End quote. I briefly touched on this in chapter 14 when discussing the earliest clowns of Greek and Roman theatre. But to once again paraphrase the Encyclopaedia Britannica, attempts have been made by anthropologists and historians alike to discover the religious origins of secular clowns, fools, and jesters, with myself currently making another attempt. It is the ritual roles of masked clown societies among such groups as the American Indians that have attracted the most attention as an explanation, though it has remained unclear, up until now, what the clowns of these tribes are modelling themselves after. When most people first hear my theory of the clown aesthetic and its connection to the Nephilim, these particular sacred clowns are the first to come to mind and are perhaps the top suggestion I receive. The most famous of these are the Heyoka of the Lakota Indians, or the Coyemchi and dancing clowns of the Pueblo Indians. Their obscene and sacrilegious actions punctuate the most important religious ceremonies, and serve as a sign of the presence of the powerful primordial beings. I have shown through my online work that through analysing the aesthetical forms of these costumes, we can see that they are representations of the now disembodied Nephilim. This will also be the main study for Volume 2 of this book series. However, most anthropologists, when studying these groups, usually put their main focus on the actions of the clown, rather than their costume. It would be difficult to make an immediate connection to the demonic from their actions alone, as they appear to serve a noble role and are a positive for the tribe. Sacred clowns are considered a means of social control for the betterment of the tribe's cohesion. They do this by creating satirical performances of antisocial behavior, often by picking on a particular individual in front of the whole tribe. By holding such an important role in the tribe, the Pueblo Clowns of the Hopi, for example, is seen not only as a local comedian and teacher, but as a spiritual healer, shaman, and channel for the spirits. The Heyoka and the Lakota peoples of the Great Northern Territories perform the same social glue role for the tribes of the Pueblo Clowns of the Hopi and surrounding tribes of the southwest regions of America. While both Heyoka and Pueblo Clowns are painted in the same black and white striped pattern, the Heyoka attribute the entity they embody to be a specific type of thunder god called the Wakinyan. The Lakota fear the rains and storms which the Wakinyan spirits bring, and dress this way to ward them off or communicate with them, while the Hopi appear to perform these rites while dressed in the same costume to bring rain and a good harvest instead. The desired practical outcome for dressing in this particular costume and performing the dances differs between the two tribes. However, their similar costumes tells us that these tribes have a shared experience with something from the ancient past that has a striped pattern. The way this powerful being looked has echoed into the styles of the present-day ritual costumes and was passed down through oral tradition. Today, the ancient traditions of the sacred clown are slowly blending into a commercialized simulacrum for tourism, or a museum relic of the forgotten past for the native peoples of America. You can find numerous tacky and contrived questionnaires online to determine if you are a Heyoka empath, for example. The truth is, no one who is a Heyoka would want to be one. Wambly Sinowin, an associate professor and director of the Criminal Justice Department at Bocconi College in Muskogee, Oklahoma, wrote extensively about her worries about her people's ancient practices for the native times in 2011. Her grandfather was John Fire, Chief Lame Deer, a well-known Lakota holy man, and Heyoka from the Rosebud Sioux Indian Reservation. She had this to say concerning the life of a typical Heyoka. Quote, "The Heyoka is a brotherhood of those in the present as well as those Heyoka who have gone on. The Heyoka is the human hand as well as the spiritual warrior of the Wakinyan, the thunder beings. Though favored and protected by a Wakantanka, the great power, but an even greater responsibility, the Heyoka's life is never his own. Some of the Heyoka, such as Chief Frank Foolscrow, were able to lead exemplary lives. He was fortunate to have been raised from an early childhood in a family which was steeped in Lakota tradition, culture, and knowledge about spirituality. However, other Heyoka have not been as fortunate to have this support system. Not all Heyoka fully understood this calling from which they could not run. As a result, some were humbled and suffered personal tragedy until they agreed to do what was asked of them. One of the greatest misconceptions is that one chooses to be a Heyoka. This is not true. Just as a buffalo cannot choose to become a goat, and vice versa, neither can an ordinary person wake up one day and choose to become a Heyoka. One cannot take classes to learn to become a Heyoka or train to become a Heyoka. There is no way to become certified or apprentice to become a Heyoka. One cannot go up on a hill on a vision quest and dream it up and one certainly cannot make it up. It is Wakantanka, the great mystery, who chooses the Heyoka before he or she is ever born. Who in their right mind would willingly choose such a life of hardship and sacrifice? End quote. This concept that the Heyoka doesn't choose to become the Heyoka is highly reminiscent of the Mudang spirit channelers of Korea. The Mudangs also claim that they only became a shaman due to suffering great trauma and hardship prior, which opened them up to possession more readily. The truth is, the Wakinyan spirits who bring thunder and destruction are feared greatly by the Lakota people, and it is the Heyoka who is turned to as protector of the tribe from the evil spirits. By mimicking the thunder beings in looks and by performing the correct rituals to the Great Spirit, the Heyoka is hoping to prevent the destruction of the coming storm. This is still done today as a symbolic rite for New Year rituals, a gesture to bring good luck against the coming year's troubles. However, by all oral accounts, the stopping of storms was a real power the Heyoka possessed, along with the ability to avoid harm from fire or weapons, just like the possessed Madang of Korea, who becomes impervious to damage during their cut ritual. Both the Pueblo clowns and the Heyoka clowns have the same distinctive black and white lined features. Emphasized facial features such as wide eyes or mouths and antennae of varying lengths, just like that of a jester hat. These features could easily be equated to the patterns of black and white corn snakes or any monochromatic reptile, wide eyes and mouths included. The antennae are very reminiscent of horns, not an uncommon feature for a dragon, and a possible feature of the dragon-human hybrids, the Nephilim. This motif is even adopted by European jesters, especially those involved in the Italian carnival, but they would say it is simply to represent the crown of a king. If we observe the koshari kachina of the Pueblo clowns in particular, we also find the performers wearing large red shoes, with a mouth stained with watermelon juice. The performers' red-stained teeth, mixed with black and white chalk paint, create a similar look to the wide red smile of a modern clown, and that of a gorging cannibal. The red watermelon flesh mimics that of muscle and viscera, uncannily, while large red shoes only accentuate the size of the beast's feet they are channeling. These styles of shoes are a standard for the circus clown of the West, and perhaps it is the Pueblo clown who were the inspiration for their inclusion in the occult caricature created by the Freemasons. It can be confirmed that the Heyoka is a representation of the thunder god known as a Wakinyan, a black and white, polka-dot, wide-eyed, eagle-clawed, horned beast who brings destruction in its wake. We can also infer that the sacred clowns of an identical design in the surrounding tribes of the American continent also find their roots in the same creature, due to the aesthetic similarities. This creature comes to the Heyoka in visions, and this ability to see the Wakinyan is a prerequisite to being an official Heyoka. In some visions, he also appeared as a snowbird, a swallow, a horse, a dog, a nighthawk, a frog, or a dragonfly. The Wakinyan has also been equated with being another version of the Thunderbird gods. The Thunderbird is a mystical creature that is said to be the dominating force of an all-natural activity. Located in the Pacific Northwest Mountains, the Thunderbird creates booms of thunder by flapping his wings and shooting bolts of lightning from his eyes. It is believed that during the Great Flood that almost wiped out all living things, a Thunderbird from the clouds transformed into a human and saved the Great Chief, who built his home on a mountain. Once the flood receded, the Thunderbird helped gather the survivors and rebuild civilization to that geographical location. This is a perfect example of humans surviving the flood of Noah with the help of rebellious fallen angels. The thunderbird resembles an eagle, but is distinguished by two curved horns, plumage on his head, or electric snakes under his wings. Legend has it the coastal tribes cried to the thunderbird for help in times of food shortage, and he did help, but in return requested that from then on he must be shown on top of totem poles with his wings stretched out. That is the reason the thunderbird appears on top of so many northwest coast totem poles today. The shape-shifting nature of these electrified, flying, horned beasts is exemplified through another myth that involves a specific young thunderbird named Kolu. The story goes that he flew down from heaven, transformed into a human, and became the founding ancestor of the tribe or clan. This is almost identical to the Canary peoples of Ecuador, who believe themselves to be the descendants of a human-bird hybrid after a great flood, discussed thoroughly in Chapter 8. But for now you can see that the electric flying thunder god has always been a main staple of native lore for the Americans, and their depictions where they are found are very colourful. One last tribe that is also worth a mention for their aesthetics is the Selknam natives of southern Argentina, Chile, and the Tierra del Fuego Islands. We get a glimpse into their representations of demons and spirits during the Selknam male initiation ceremony called Hain. During this ceremony, young males were called to a dark hut to which they would be attacked by spirits, who were men dressed as supernatural beings. If we examine the way these men dress, we see an almost identical rendition of the Pueblo and Heyoka clowns of the northern continent, thousands of miles away from these remote peoples. Black, white, and red lines cover the bodies of the men in polka dot and striped patterns, while they wear masked headdresses and create a large cone head or a set of horned antennae with a distinctly ghostly facade. Whether the practitioners of sacred clowning are dressing like a thunder god akin to the seraphim class angels of biblical lore, or they are dressing like a lesser offspring of the same flying, fiery monsters, there is no denying that the shamanistic nature of sacred clowning and the patterned costumes worn to channel spirits gives us great insight into the way these specific entities looked in this geographical location. And they are certainly colourful and clownish in nature. And we can see through the Selknam that this specific design choice of ritualistic garb is not exclusive to the Northern American continent for the purpose of clowning. Indeed, the main purpose for wearing these costumes, though the end goal may vary, is to channel the spirits of primordial gods. Perhaps Robert Lima, author of Stages of Evil, Occultism in Western Theatre and Drama, put it best when discussing the proclivity of man to take part in these extravagant displays of costume pageantry and to channel entities. Quote, "But the play is still a ritual, now substituting for Dionysus some other divinity or cause. Today, as in the past, it is in the play that life can be scrutinized with the greatest immediacy. Regardless of trappings and sidelights, the play still holds the mirror up to life and lets us see ourselves in major proportions. There is no more effective artistic communication. And one of the reflections in that mirror is of humanity's belief since prehistory in the occult, a hidden supernatural dimension whose denizens, from gods to demons, can intervene in human affairs of their own volition or at the behest of an individual adept in the arts of summoning them, either in a religious or in a secular venue. Shaman, celebrant, magus, or witch all essentially perform rituals to evoke the supernatural beings, for purposes of worship, emulation, or service. And, when involuntary possession of a human by such a being occurs, the tribal healer, shaman, curandero, rabbi, priest, or minister is called on to perform a rite of exorcism. Whatever the period or setting, it is all theatre." End quote. With Lima's last 4 words here in mind, it is all theatre. We must realise that it is through the theatre of TV, film, music, and stage performance that both voluntary and involuntary possession takes place in the West. You dress like the thing to channel the thing, and this rule applies to those who choose to dress in the image of the demonic or clown, regardless of their awareness of this law. Ignorance of the spiritual law does not make one immune to such things. The only difference in the Western world is that no shaman is coming to help exorcise this Nephilim spirit once it is allowed in, and the spirit will make sure its host doesn't know they are there, for as long as it can get away with. They do this so they can live vicariously through their host's senses for as long as possible. Thanks for listening, guys. If you enjoyed this, make sure to go to the channel, go to the playlist section, click the Nephilim Looked Like Clowns, and you'll find that there is a plethora of work dating back over 8 years expounding upon this theory. The book is going to be published very soon. In a couple of months, maybe at the beginning of June, I will have Volume 1 released. And this is a segment you have just heard from the closing chapters of that book. So I hope you enjoyed this. You can support the book still by going to the GoFundMe, links down below. And if you do just want to help support me in general, there is a Patreon available with tons of extra content. Again, the link is down below. But I'm going to leave it there for now, guys. Thanks for listening, and as always, God bless.
I want you to get together